All right. Um, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the background of the California Gold Rush. And here we go. So, in 1849, gold was first discovered at Sutter's Mill in a small town called Coloma, California, not Colma, extra O there, Coloma, which is in the Sierra Nevada near Tahoe, but not super, super close, but it's up in the mountains, basically. Now, after news broke, thousands flooded in attempt to find gold in 1849. Right, we call them the 49ers because of this, which is where the football team gets its name. Two-thirds of those 49ers were Americans. The rest came from all over the world: Mexico, South America, Europe, Australia, China. There were groups from all over. And most of the 49ers were young and male. The general plan was for these young men to come to California, strike it rich, and then go back home. In large part, they did not bring their wives and families if they had them at all. Now, the journey to California was accomplished in three ways. There was overland, taking a trail like the Oregon Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, the California Trail, by ship to Panama to cross over the isthmus. It's a hard word to say. And then from that isthmus, landing in the Caribbean to then cross through the jungles and take another boat all the way up north again to California, or by taking a boat journey all the way around the southern tip of South America. Now, of course, there were different groups coming from different areas, but for the two-thirds of people coming from somewhere in the United States, most of the population being from the East Coast, those were the three main ways to get to California. And all three were dangerous in different ways. We know from playing the game that the Oregon Trail was certainly not a piece of cake by any means. And there were definitely dangers traveling anywhere by ship at this time, especially if you add in the rough Straits of Magellan at the southern tip of South America, or some of the jungle diseases like malaria or yellow fever that one could contract in Panama. So these were definitely not easy journeys. Now, San Francisco became a really important traveling hub for people to get into gold country up in the mountains. People would sail to the port of San Francisco, park their boat, and then in large numbers, they would actually abandon the entire boat. The crew, the captain, everybody would head up into the hills because they were told that this was going to be the most that they would be able to make lots of money. Now, we can see that in 1848, before the gold rush really hit, California, or San Francisco's population, was 850 people back in the days of Juana Briones and her homestead there in North Beach. And then by December of 1849, the population was 25,000 people in San Francisco. And it certainly changed the dynamics of the city. And this type of major growth and cultural diversity, right? People were coming from all over the world, created a really interesting place, as well as the fact that San Francisco itself, beyond the military and the Presidio, didn't really have a functioning government, police force kind of thing. So there was a lot of lawlessness and fighting, illegal activities, all kinds of things going on at this time. So it was kind of a rough place, especially because many people who didn't make a lot of money in the gold rush um, were actually stuck in San Francisco and California after they were done. Now, life in the mining camps was a very rough kind of place. These two women, who were rare in and of themselves, being women in these camps, talk about how tough it was. People would fight over the boundaries of their claims, which was the space designated for each person to mine, and there was a lot of vigilante justice going on. So Luciana Wilson comments that there was a row of canvas tents. Months later, there were 2,000 men, and the streets were lined with drinking saloons and gambling tables. So a lot of folks out there who had um, different amounts of money found from mining, and then not a lot of places to spend it. So you could go drink or you could gamble. And that's kind of about it at the time out there in the middle of nowhere. And then Louise Clapp says that in the short space of 24 hours, we have had murders, fearful accidents, bloody deaths, a mob, whippings, a hanging, an attempted suicide, and a fatal duel. Now, there were three main ways that people were mining. Sluice mining was diverting part of a stream or river into that kind of like channel you see there on the far left, and separating the gold from dirt with water, and kind of creating that trough where they ran the water through. You could pan, which is probably the most famous, where you get dirt and from the riverbed and slush it around with water, and kind of the water and dirt will slowly separate from the gold. And then finally, you could excavate an entire riverbed by diverting the water into an alternate channel. And you can see that on the far right, where folks are down below with the wheelbarrows, and then there's the water off to the side. Now, folks could spend up to 16 hours in these rivers, digging up mud and dirt and stones, standing knee deep in icy streams. This was hard, boring work. And very quickly, the day of quick fortune making was gone. There were thousands of men now in California who would gladly go home if they had the money, right? They spent a lot of money getting to California, but didn't end up making it rich, mostly, and then getting stuck there because they didn't have enough money to pay their way to go back home. Now, between 1848 and 1852, there were more than 20,000 Chinese who immigrated to California. In 1852, 1 in 10 Californians was Chinese. Originally welcomed by Californians, once mining became difficult, attitudes towards immigrants changed, especially the Chinese. And we see this really frequently throughout US history, that when times are good, America is very welcoming. But when times are tough, or there's any kind of crisis, economically or otherwise, suddenly America is not very welcoming. So in 1852, towards the end of the gold rush, the state legislature passed a law requiring any foreign miners to pay monthly fees to mine. Most immigrants left, and the Chinese immigrants, for large parts, paid the tax and stayed. And or, as the last bullet point says, many Chinese then left the mines to open businesses or begin farms. And those businesses were actually quite profitable because of the different fields of work that many Chinese in California then um, became invested in and started. Those types of businesses, which were restaurants, laundromats, farms, like they say there as well, became really profitable really quickly. Now, Americans began to bully the Chinese, and we can really read bully as commit hate crimes against Chinese, and trying to get them to leave by cutting their braids, burning their shacks, generally making them feel unwelcome. Now, the overall legacy of the gold rush was that there were 25,000 people, 250,000 people, sorry, that flooded into California. And by 1850, California had become the first state in the far west. There was a really diverse population here, and there were lots of economic opportunities. There were amazing opportunities in business, in railroads, in mining, and all of these really were due to the gold rush. However, the Native American population dropped dramatically from warfare and disease, going from 150,000 to 30,000 in just those 22 years, which is a lot of people to die during that time. And many Californios lost their land to newcomers. We know this from learning about Juana last week and why it was so momentous that she was able to keep her land even after the United States took over California. So, overall, very interesting legacy, really, really shaped California and San Francisco. And that's what we're going to look at more this week.